Welcome everyone, StealthyShiroean here, and today I'm bringing you my review of the Humble Choice Bundle for May 2022. Another month, another set of 8 games. But are they any good? Let me know what you think of this month's bundle in the comments below. Be sure to check the timestamps for specific games, and stay tuned for my final thoughts in the end. Okay, let's get to the review. First up is Embr. Here you play as a firefighter on call and sent to various places to save civilians and maybe make some extra cash on the side. The gameplay here is frantic and fun. Your firefighter is equipped with a loadout that can be customized and upgraded along the way. Of course, players have the expected items like a hose, fire axe, and ladder, but there are many other numerous items such as the water grenade. I didn't experiment much with this game, but it seems to have a lot of options for tackling these house fires. Each level poses its own challenges and different mission types. At first you'll be rescuing civilians and have to fight the fire back, which prevents the house from collapsing to give you precious time you need. Eventually other mission types open up, such as salvaging, which is to save as many items as possible, or the escape missions, which have a slight puzzle-solving element to them. All the while, players will be contending with an ever-raging inferno. I thought the fire mechanic was really well done. I liked that the houses would start falling apart, forcing the player to think about traversal each time they re-entered the house, as well as posing new risks to the player. This game also has multiplayer, but don't expect to be playing with anyone but friends, as the all-time peak for this game was only at around 600 people, with the last 24 hours being only 114. I do think this is the perfect game for multiplayer, although I did appreciate that it had a single-player campaign mode to go through, which I wasn't originally expecting upon first seeing it in the bundle. All in all, it's a fun game and you should try it out if you like hectic gameplay. Genesis Noir is a point-and-click adventure game spanning time and space. This one is strange. I really didn't get what I was playing for a while, and still not entirely sure I get it even after my hour with it. From the store page, and what I gathered from it myself, players take the role of a watch salesman who had a relationship with Miss Mass. However, her other lover finds out about this and tries to kill her by firing off a Big Bang. And yes, I mean the Big Bang that started the universe as we know it. Each section of the game has players travel through a very stylistic acid trip spanning the history of the universe. Perception and reality is vague, and it seems like the devs want the players to create their own assumptions with a very loose hand guiding the player. The gameplay is largely point and click with some puzzles along the way. I don't think any of this was difficult, but I felt I was largely watching things happen. The game didn't feel like a game to me, and I think the fun here will be seeing the psychedelic nature of its visual presentation. Which wasn't my bag at all. The game is unique, but there wasn't much more to it than that for me. And the next game wasn't something I was into either. Here we have If Found, which is a visual novel. I had issues redeeming this key this month, but as visual novels go, I figured that there probably wasn't much in the way of gameplay, so I felt content with watching gameplay for the story. And it turns out, I was right. Any actual gameplay here consists of moving the mouse back and forth to erase what's on the page and reveal more of the story. And that's pretty much it. The style of game reminded me a bit of Milky Way Prince from the June 2021 bundle, but that's probably because that's the last visual novel I could really remember playing. And honestly, I felt that one was probably better in terms of gameplay because it gave the player actual choice. Here we follow the character Cassio, who is trying to find herself and understand who she is in a world where not many people accept her or her transgender identity. There is some sort of black hole meta-narrative that I'm sure is some sort of metaphor, but as you probably already know, I'm not good with those kinds of things. Overall, I felt the story was alright. However, many have said it to be a very emotional story for them and loved it. Perhaps I didn't play it long enough to get to that emotional payout, but again, this game wasn't for me. Surviving the Aftermath is a city builder game set in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. I think it was almost inevitable that this would end up in a Humble Choice, since it gave away Surviving Mars already, and more recently Endzone A World Apart, which follows the exact same setting. I think many playing this game will probably compare it to one of those two titles. With what little I played of Endzone, I couldn't definitively say which one was better. In Endzone, I mentioned liking the way they did exploration on one seamless map. In Surviving the Aftermath, it uses a separate world map feature and a variety of specialists to carry out certain activities such as fighting, scouting, and scavenging. Much of the other tasks will be very similar to Endzone. Make sure your colonists are happy by providing shelter, food, and water. Be wary of radiation, or in this game, everything is under the blanket term pollution. And eventually upgrade their way of life through research into things such as giving them electricity, providing education, and giving them proper homes rather than the tents the community starts with. Of course, there is also the occasional clash with the local bandits, which is par for the course with the post-apocalyptic setting. I think I like Surviving the Aftermath better than Endzone because things felt more streamlined and easier to pick up. However, once again, I've barely put any time into either of these games, and I'm just judging them from an hour only. That being said, I like what I played here. Next up is in a similar management vein, but this time we're running our very own wizardry school in Spellcaster University. The forces of evil are bearing down on everyone, and as headmaster, the player has a limited time to make a magic school and disseminate as much mystical knowledge as possible before repeating it all over again in a new area. The way the game plays out is based on a bit of luck, since it uses a random card system to place rooms and objects. Each of these things can offer new subjects or improve the students or teachers in some way. Throughout each run, players will gain money and 5 different types of mana that are used for new constructions and events. Wannabe Dumbledores also gain prestige for their school. As they gain more prestige, it will attract better students, which will, in turn, net more money and hopefully better graduates who will also provide bonuses for the school. In my time with the game, which actually ended up being 2 hours instead of 1, I found myself placing new rooms randomly. I'm not sure if there are bonuses for better placement or not. Still, the process of building up the school was entertaining, but I can see it getting old pretty fast. Much of my time was just fast-forwarding at the fastest speed, so I can get enough resources to place another room. Because of the randomness of the cards, I wasn't sure how much strategy is really involved here. Also, the characters, unfortunately, aren't that interesting to watch as they mill about the school. I might come back to this one, but my time with it will undoubtedly be short unless an update greatly overhauls gameplay or if more interesting choices open up as I get further into it. Command & Conquer Remastered Collection is a remaster of a beloved RTS classic originally released in the mid-90s. I'm sure this game will be a great trip down nostalgia lane for many people. For everyone else, it won't be worth much more than a try just to see a relic of the past. Growing up in the 90s, RTS aficionados were in one of 3 camps: Command & Conquer, Age of Empires, and eventually StarCraft. I was an Age of Empires person and only played StarCraft much later on as a teenager. I never touched Command & Conquer because I wasn't really a fan of the contemporary/near-future setting it had. I was all about swords, bows, and spears. And that really hasn't changed that much, especially in regards to this game. The remaster comes with updated sounds and visuals. Also, I think there are some quality of life features like an updated UI and unit queuing, but it plays like an old RTS. There's nothing like attack move options for units or the ability to set rally points. Any tutorial is lacking for anyone new to the series, so it's definitely for the crowd who have already played the originals in the past. The full motion videos are fun to watch and deliver a decent amount of story. However, I've never been the biggest fan of FMVs, which was another reason why I didn't care for Command & Conquer back in the day. So this is definitely not one I'll be returning to, especially since I'll forget all about it since it's an origin-only key and I hardly ever open that launcher. Following that is another remastered game, Spongebob Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. Apparently, this is a remake of a game released back in 2003. I never had the opportunity to play this one, nor have I heard that much about this game at all. What we have here is a 3D adventure platformer set in the colorful and humorous world of SpongeBob and his home Bikini Bottom. Visually, the game delivers, and is a great bit of nostalgia for fans of the franchise, even if they've never played the original game. I really liked how many of the characters seem to have the same voice actors, or at the very least, were really close to the original. It was a bit jarring to hear Mr. Krabs, though.
SpongeBob, this flappin' robot crisis is making the Krusty Krab lose money like a sinking ship. No money means no more Krusty Krab. No more Krusty Krab means no more fry cooking for you.
Gameplay here is rather simple, but it's fun. There's a good bit of exploring and collecting random MacGuffins to progress the story. Throughout the game, players control SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy through the different levels. In my time with it, I only got to play SpongeBob and Patrick, and everything controlled very well. Nothing was too challenging, at least not yet, and I thought the checkpoints were pretty generous even when I did die. If you like the show at all, then definitely try this one out. I'd like to play more of this one eventually. The big headliner for this month, and final game of the bundle, is Planet Zoo. This is a zoo tycoon management sim where players build and run a zoo. The details here are amazing, and I really loved watching the animals, which is the main reason why I wanted this game to begin with. When designing the animal habitats, each animal has their own needs that have to be met for them to stay healthy and happy. These needs consist of things like food and water, of course, as well as toys to keep them from boredom. Also, each habitat needs to be created with certain terrain types in mind. I thought this was a nice touch to encourage players to mess around with the design features. Planet Zoo definitely leans more towards the creation and designing of things, rather than the management side similar to Planet Coaster. People who love to make things will be right at home here, as long as they can get used to the somewhat clunky controls. Although, between caring for the animals and the people in the park, I thought this title had more management gameplay than with Planet Coaster. While I'm not the most creative when it comes to building things, I definitely want to come back to this one, if only to make a bunch of habitats just to watch the animals. Okay, let's wrap this up and see if this bundle is worth it or not. I based my rating solely on whether I thought the game was worth playing on about an hour or so of hands-on gameplay. Overall, this was just an okay bundle. In the recent months prior to this one, I think it stands as one of the lower-end months. Everything in this bundle is for a fairly niche crowd with no single game having a mass appeal. I think the quality of all the games is still relatively good, even if there were several that didn't mesh with me. Not every month is going to be a home run, and that's okay. Getting into the nitty-gritty, we could start with the must-plays of the month. It kind of pains me to say it, but I didn't feel there was any game in this bundle that I felt could be placed here. Like I said, there's some good stuff, but there wasn't anything that jumped out at me. For my strong recommendations, I'd place Embr, SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, Surviving the Aftermath, and Planet Zoo. Embr was a game that was fun and easy to pick up. I think its hectic gameplay will be a blast to play with a friend, similar to something like Overcooked. The SpongeBob remaster was a treat, and is definitely a great fan service game. I'm not into 3D platformers that much, especially older games in the genre, but this one played great and I had fun with it. Surviving the Aftermath is one of those games where it's really hard to determine if it's good with just an hour or two of gameplay. As of now, I'm eager to go back and give it a try, so it might be a good city builder to sink your teeth into. Finally, Planet Zoo was another management game that I liked from the bundle. I think the creative elements of it might be a bit overwhelming, but I'm sure I'll have a good time crafting all sorts of animal habitats regardless. I only have one week recommendation this month, and that's Spellcaster University. The idea of building my own magic school sounds great on paper, but in execution I think it falls a bit short. Still, a good time waster for at least a little bit. In my Don't Bother With section, we have If Found, Genesis Noir, and Command & Conquer Remastered Collection. If Found might be a great story and a great piece of media for transgender representation. However, it's just not my kind of game, especially since I feel it can barely be called a game at all. Genesis Noir doesn't quite fall into the same category, but it's very close. The overly abstract nature of everything and the simplistic gameplay were huge turnoffs for me, despite the unique visuals. Lastly, Command & Conquer takes its place here because I just didn't play it back in the 90s. Despite the upscaling, the game is still very much a product of its time, and I don't have the same rose-tinted glasses that fans of the originals would have. And that wraps up my thoughts on this month's bundle. This month has been the weakest so far this year, but there's always next month. Do you agree with my thoughts? What games, if any, are you looking forward to playing? Let me know what your thoughts are, or if there are any different recommendations you'd make in the comments below. I hope this video helped you in some small way, and if it did, then please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever it is you feel like doing. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.